So this is the last unit for Math 3, and it's going to be a little bit short and condensed, and we're going to go pretty slow. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to start off with radians and degrees and then showing you the unit circle. Okay, and what all this stuff has to do with is the periodic function we've been looking at for the last unit. And I'll show you how that all intermixes. But first, we're going to show you how to convert from degrees to radians and radians to degrees. So if you don't know what radians are is a way that you measure a periodic function on the x-axis most of the time. Okay, so if you graph sine or cosine, generally the x-axis is measured in radians and not in degrees or just numbers. Okay, so we're going to show you how to do this in radians, and then we're going to show you what the unit circle is and how it relates. So the first thing is converting from degrees to radians. So at the top here you can see that if you want to get radians, you take your degrees and you multiply them by pi over 180. So let's show you how this works. So you get times pi over 180. So what you do is you take on your calculator, if you go to Calculator 84, that app that we should have downloaded before we left school, you get 150 pi, you divide it by 180. Okay, so what you're going to do is on your calculator, take 150, and you're going to divide it by 180. And it's going to give you a decimal. But we don't want a decimal. Radians are calculated in fractions. Okay, so we're going to convert this decimal of 0.833333 to a fraction. So you hit Math, enter, enter, and you get a fraction of 5 pi over 6. Okay, and that is your answer. All right, so we go to 330. You multiply that by pi over 180. You get 330 pi over 180. Again, you take 330 divided by 180 on your calculator, convert it to a fraction using Math, enter, enter, and you'll get 11 pi over 6. All right, and then finally 540. So you multiply this by pi over 180. Gives you 540 pi over 180. So again, you take 540 divided by 180, and you're going to get 3. So it'd be 3 pi. All right, so take a moment, pause the video if you're watching the video and you haven't done this yet. Try D, E, and F for these problems and see what you come up with. Okay, so hopefully you did something by pausing the video and trying the problems on your own without the notes. Let's see how you did. So 30 degrees multiplied by pi over 180 is going to give you pi over 6. 60 degrees times pi over 180 gives you pi over 3. And 45 degrees times pi over 180 gives you pi over 4. Okay, so that is converting degrees to radians. Now we're going to do the flip side of that. We're going to convert radians to degrees. So if you want degrees, you take the radian and now you multiply it by the reciprocal of what we just did of 180 over pi. Okay, so we have pi over 9. We multiply that by 180 over pi. And what this does is the pi's will cancel out, and you're going to get 180 divided by 9. So you get 180 divided by 9, and you get 20 degrees. Okay. So 3 pi over 5, you get multiplied by 180 over pi. The pi's will cancel out. So 3 times 180 is 540 divided by 5, which gives you 108. All right, please use your calculator for this. And then lastly here, 5 pi. We multiply this by 180 over pi. The pi's will cancel, and you just do 5 times 180, and you get 900 degrees. Okay, so again, take a moment, pause the video, try the next 3. I'm sorry, I didn't change the ABCs to something else. So do the next 3, starting with 2 pi over 3. See if you can do these and see what you get. Then come back to the video and check your answers. Hopefully you did that. And now we're back. So we're going to multiply this by 180 over pi, which gives you, multiply that out, it gives you 120 by 180 over pi. So gives you 225. And then 11 pi over 6 times 180 over pi gives you 330. Okay, so now the reason we do all this stuff, convert from radians to degrees, to show you how they're interrelated. But how this all comes together is down here in this what's called the unit circle. Okay, all the graphs for sine and cosine are graphed based on the values you find in the unit circle. You can see here that you're given some of these values already that you saw up above. I'm going to put in red to make it highlighted. So you can see the 30 degrees and pi over 6 are in the same spot. Okay, 45 and pi over 4, and so on and so forth. So you got the degrees around, and then you got the radians on the inside. Now again, when you graph sine and cosine, you're doing it using the radians as your x value, and the y values come from the points that you see on the outside. Okay, and we're going to show you this a little bit later, showing you how you can graph these using radians. All right, but I just wanted to introduce the unit circle in and of itself. Okay, we've talked about periods of a periodic function. One period of a periodic function is 2 pi, right here. So once around the unit circle. So if you start at 0 and go once around the unit circle, you end up here, which is at 2 pi. So all default periods for a sine or cosine function are 2 pi because it's one time around the unit circle. Okay, so that's kind of a brief introduction to the unit circle, and we'll show you more about graphing sine and cosine with the unit circle at a later time. All right, and we'll see you